Yes, Mo the Radical Messiah coming at you with another one. I'm going to talk about foundational black Americans need to teach their children about white supremacy. When I was growing up, my mother and my stepfather, they didn't teach me a lot about white supremacy. You know, some black families really don't go into full detail about, that we live in a system of white supremacy. A lot of black people, are in denial about that. And I'm 40 years old, so my parents could have taught me about white supremacy when I was younger, about hanging around white folks, about, even dealing with them, going to school with them, going to their house, all that stuff. They really could have schooled me on some game about how to deal with white supremacy at a young age, and they really didn't. They really didn't go into full detail about white supremacy because like I said, a lot of black families, they live in denial about white supremacy because, they got them a nice little job. They got a house. I grew up in a 4-bedroom house and in a neighborhood, a nice neighborhood around white folks. And they didn't really, going into depth about white supremacy, but they came from poverty out there in Louisiana. So they should have known a little bit about white supremacy back then. It's still prevalent. We still live in a system of white supremacy no matter what year it is. We've been living under the system of white supremacy for almost 300 years. Since 1776, when the United States became a country, got its independence from Britain. So we've been living in the system of white supremacy for a long time. And, these young black parents, they need to go out here and teach these kids about white supremacy, man, about, the racial double standards that, if a black person, a black child get in trouble, they're going to get the book thrown at them. But if a white child get in trouble, they're going to get a slap on the wrist. You can work hard, get you a degree, and still have to deal with white supremacists at the job. A mediocre white supremacist get the job over you. They become the supervisor, and you got to sit there and listen to them. Let them talk to you like you a damn slave on a plantation, some mediocre meth head white supremacist. Living in a trailer park, got a bunch of kids on welfare, on food stamps, stuff like that. You got to deal with stuff like that. These people talking to you like you a slave on a plantation. These school teachers, mispronouncing some of the black kids' names on purpose. Got a lot of white supremacy going on, and a lot of black people need to teach their kids about white supremacy at a young age. So when they become adults, they know how to navigate through the system of white supremacy and how to deal with the white supremacist race soldiers, how to deal with these police officers. I see a lot of videos, these black folks talking to police all crazy. They don't understand that we live in a system of white supremacy. Ooh, white supremacy is a doozy. And it's like a psychological prison, but you got to maneuver it and get out of it, basically. You got to know the ins and outs of white supremacy. And these young kids having babies don't teach their kids about white supremacy at all. They go to school getting in trouble, dealing with these white supremacist school teachers, white supremacist principals, white supremacist school superintendents. You got to deal with all that. And I know it's hard for, an adult. They got to go to work, got to pay bills. They sit there and teach their kids about white supremacy. This is the same way about teaching your kids how to count, teaching your kids how to read, teaching your kids how to, do normal things that an everyday person should do. It's the same thing. To sit your children down, talk to them about white supremacy, talk to them about the school they go to. They can't do the same things that the white kids do, or the Hispanic, Latino kids, or the East Indian, Asian kids do, because they're going to get all slaps on the wrist, and the black kids going to get all get the book thrown at them, get the fullest extent of the law. So you got to teach these kids that, because when kids in school, when they in like elementary school, they ain't really looking at race like that, but when they get in their junior high and high school, it becomes a problem. They got to understand how to navigate through the system of white supremacy. High school, basically, is where you learn the real white supremacy. Because in elementary school, kindergarten through first, second, third, fourth, fifth grade, sixth grade, you really ain't really tripping about no white supremacy and nothing like that, because you know, you're going to school with a bunch of different races. But when you go to junior high, middle school, and high school, that's when you got to know about white supremacy. Because when you start hanging around these white folks, start going into their house and seeing these white supremacists up close, you might not make it out that house alive. Like, you swimming in the swimming pool with these white folks, these white supremacist kids be trying to drown these black kids. And one white supremacist kid got away with drowning a kid. I think like a couple years ago. I forgot what state that was in. Stuff like that, man. These white supremacists teach your kids about anti-black racism early. Start using the N-word around them early. So when they go to school, they get into it with a black kid, they start calling the N-word, stuff like that. And about, you know, like you in junior high and high school, and you black, you dating somebody that's non-black, a white girl, and she go back and tell her family that she dating a black guy or whatever, and her family going to sit there and try to disown her. That's white supremacy. Stuff like that, man. You know, when young and your kids, you really ain't tripping about no race. Nothing like that, man. But when it comes to harsh reality, when you start having to deal with white supremacy at a young age in high school and junior high, stuff like that, these black parents got to start teaching their kids about white supremacy at an early age, man. Just like the white supremacists teach their kids about being an anti-black racist at an early age. So they got to teach your black kids about white supremacy and the racial double standards. It's just, I don't know if these parents out here been teaching their kids about white supremacy, because now talk about white supremacy, these kids don't understand that. And some of these young adults don't understand that either. They've been hanging around white people and Hispanics their whole life. And when you tell them that these people practice anti-black racism, they act like they can't understand that. Like, come on, man. I was talking to like a 23-year-old black girl at the job I worked at. She was dating some Hispanic dude. I'm letting her know that these people practice anti-black racism on a daily basis. They got colonized by Spain. Spain, the one who started the slave trade, and they still harbor that same anti-black racism all these years. All these Spanish-speaking people practice anti-black racism. And I was telling her that, and she was like, well, no, their family not racist. I'm like, girl, these people practice anti-black racism, man, on a daily basis, like drinking water, like eating food. I hate when I tell some of these people about how anti-black racist some of these folks are. They some there tell me that all of them racist. All white people are racist. Ain't all Hispanics racist. I'm like, dude, most of them are. They just sit there and play and laugh in your face because you the fool hanging around them, in a relationship with them. A fool. You got to teach your kids that we live in a system of white supremacy. Before they even go to school, before they even go to kindergarten, you got to teach them about racism. When they go to first, second grade, you got to teach them about white supremacy. You got to school these kids at a young age, so when they grow up, when they get adults and they're young adults, they 14, 15, 16 years old, they ain't out here hanging with the white supremacist kids, hanging with these anti-black racist Latinos, hanging with some of these other these immigrant groups, these non-white immigrants, hanging with these people, and they end up getting in some type of trouble, and they end up getting a book thrown at them. You got to understand we live in a system of white supremacy. Just like out here in Texas, that Carmelo Anthony case, he went out there and got into it with some white supremacist children, and he ended up trying to protect himself. Ended up, stabbing one of the kids with a knife, and then the kid ended up dying. You know, his parents should have told him about white supremacy. You see what I'm saying? That you hanging around these folks, you even around these people, you got to get away from them. Got to get away from them. And I know this case still going on and they haven't went to trial yet, but that's a prime example of not teaching your kids about white supremacy. Even though you're trying to protect yourself, you still got to get away from these folks. Can't be around these people, hanging around these folks. You know what I'm saying? Even if they were at a track meet or whatever, I think he was running track or whatever, so you know, you got to get yourself out the situation, man. We live in, especially out here in Texas, we live in a system of white supremacy out here. Nothing but white supremacists all around, everywhere you turn. So you got to understand that. Just like me, I'm in Arlington, Texas, and I live around a bunch of anti-black racist immigrants and white supremacists. If I go somewhere, I'm always looking. If I go to the store, go to the gas station, I got my head on a swivel. I'm looking for the white supremacists. I'm looking for the anti-black racist immigrants. If I see them anywhere, I'm getting the hell up out of there. That's why when I go to the grocery store, there's a bunch of white supremacists running around. I go ahead and get what I need and get the hell up out of there. If I go to the gas station, see some white supremacists, some anti-black racists, Hispanics running around, I'm getting the hell up out of there. I'm not for to sit around no location and be around these folks because I know how dangerous these people are. If I try to, that's why I don't even go out to eat at no restaurant because I don't want to sit around these white supremacists, man, because anything could pop off with them. They can get mad and end up, unaliving people in the restaurant, unaliving people in the grocery store. So you got to keep your head on a swivel out here. Don't hang around none of these folks. If you see these folks, go ahead and get the hell up out of there because anything can happen with these people, man. But like I said, let me get back on topic. Just parents, if you got young kids, teach them about white supremacy at an early age because my parents didn't teach me about white supremacy. I had to learn the hard way. Had to go out here and deal with these white supremacists at these schools, deal with these white supremacist neighbors, deal with the white supremacists at your job, talking to you like you a slave on a damn plantation. You got to deal with white supremacists every day, 24/7. So teach your kids about white supremacy, man, and how to navigate through it so when they become adults, they understand it and they won't get confused by it and won't get emotionally drained by it. It's emotionally draining living in a system of white supremacy, dealing with these folks on a 24-hour basis, 365-day basis. It's very emotional draining, very. So it's psychological draining as well. So just teach your kids about white supremacy at an early age, man. It's been more than a radical Messiah, Muhammad.